For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. That's James chapter 1, verse 20. I use the King James on that. I like that particular translation of that verse. Worketh. It's a little old-fashioned. Some modern translations would say something like, the anger of people does not accomplish the righteousness of God. So, what do we do with this? It is a test. Now, just before that was an instruction. And now this is an explanation, but it is also a test that we can apply. So let's go back one verse to that, as I said, yesterday's lesson, that very first verse I memorized as a new Christian on instruction. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. Swift to hear, slow to wrath, slow to speak. Why? Because your anger doesn't accomplish God's purposes. Now, there are a number of interesting things said in Scripture about anger, and we can't take it just one by itself. There's a place where it says, be angry and sin not. And there are places where it says that Jesus got angry. The one place that uses the word that means absolute furious anger. But it was anger concerning people's violation of God's righteousness. So, and it was anger at death, which has invaded this world through sin. There are things to be angry about. However, the outpouring of anger does not work the righteousness of God. Now, I said in yesterday's lesson that we'd see how it ties in with theology. And when we see someone teaching a theology that we might have a hard time understanding, we might have a hard time sorting out, is this right? Is this wrong? One test is see who's speaking it. And Jesus said, by their fruits you will know them. So when you see a theology being put forth, and then the way that it is being put forth, for example, there is a group that is putting forth their theology in the churches that put up a set of instructions on how to get your church to be a scripturally right church by our standards. And it involved deceiving everyone as you entered that church as new members about how much of a Christian you were, how much you were involved in other Christian organizations. So you would sneak into the church and later outvote everybody and take over. Does that sound like it's the fruit of a good tree? No, it's not. But here is one, wrath. The wrath of man does not work the righteousness of God. So if a particular theology is associated with being put forth by anger, by wrath, we have every right to be suspicious of it. A long time ago, there were two brothers in the church. This is a long, long time ago. Named Brother Nick and Brother Ari. Okay? And they got into a dispute. They disagreed. And they were both theologians, of at least Brother Ari was a theologian. Brother Nick at least considered himself a theologian. And Brother Ari was trying to sort out some of the deep, deep questions of theology. And so he came up with some theological theories. He brought them before the church, and the church sat down and worked them through them within the scriptures. And they said, you're wrong. You're wrong here, here, and here for this reason. It was from the scriptures. And Brother Harry looked at him and thought about it. He said, you're right. I'm wrong. I got this wrong. I'll go work on it some more. So he went and he worked on it some more. And then he came back in front to the church and said, I think I've got it sorted out now. And he laid out his theory of theology, and we don't know what it was. Now, there are reports about it, but as the old expression goes, history is written by the victors. The only reports we have about it are those that were written by his enemies, accusing him of saying certain things that he almost certainly did not say, and those who were sort of his cheering squad that he somewhat disavowed, that went much farther than him, and their stuff is wacko, and everybody knows it's wacko, and they're claiming he said some things that he apparently never really said, and we don't know what his theory of theology was. What we do know is this: no one could answer it from scriptures. No one could disprove it. And so Brother Nick came up and punched him out, and that settled the issue. If you can't settle it with the scripture, you settle it with your fist. Because Brother Nick lost his temper when he couldn't answer Brother Harry. And so, without any way to resolve it, they went to see the sheriff. The sheriff got a posse. Posse roused it up a lynch mob, and Brother Harry was eliminated. And Brother Nick has been given godlike powers of omniscience. And everyone thinks that he is as omniscient as God and knows everything. You don't think so? Check the history. But that has made me suspicious. There's something wrong with Brother Nick's theology. Because the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of